Hello, good morning. It's day 3, lockdown day 3, and this is Books at Lunchtime. And I'm Tracy at Kett's Books, and today I've got Em and Milo because we've got a question. So it's very good to not be on my own. Good morning.
Hiya. So yeah, we've had a question, Tracy. So the question we often asked in the shop is something along the lines of this, which I know that colleagues have asked this morning. I have I have an 8-year-old grandson who I'd like to buy a book for Christmas, but he's not massively keen on reading books per se. So what can you recommend? So this reluctant reader thing is something we get quite a lot. And luckily there are loads of ways around it, right? So we're happy to have pulled a few things off our collective bookshelves that we'd be happy to share with you.
Brilliant. If you could, please.
Right, okay, so we'll start off, and I've got my very able assistant here because he is basically this child, so we can draw on his experience of what he's been enjoying. So what should we start with, Milo? We've pulled a few off, haven't we, from the bookshelf here?
You know, I'm just going to choose my favourite.
Sure, that's fine. Okay, we'll go with this one first. So can you tell us what it's called?
The Atlas of Monsters.
Let's show the cover. So this one is called the Atlas of Monsters. It's a hardback book. It's a really nice size, isn't it? So it's not too overwhelming, but it's pretty meaty to get into. And can you give us a brief sort of summary of what it is?
It's a book with. So it's a dragon, myth book, but it's not all about dragons. It's got some, Theseus things and some other monsters. On the front page, there's Fenrir, some other people. But by the way, that's not a dinosaur. That is not a dinosaur.
So yeah, the idea of the book is that it goes through folklore around the world, and it's organised by a map. So if we have a look, and I see you've got one there too. Should we just open it up to Europe? You can show Fenrir then, can't we? So this is the page we've got for Europe, and you can see these are all the monsters that might appear in myth and legend. So the reader's able to explore a really brief sort of synopsis about these stories.
And then on the next page, there's a number on the beast, and then there is, in this bit here, there's lots of facts that you can do it about. So, for instance, 14 is Fenrir. This huge wolf is so dangerous that the Norse gods bound him to rock. His chains are fairy made from the breath of a fish, the footsteps of a cat, and the nervous of a bear, the spirit of a bird, the beard of a woman, and the roots of a mountain.
Wow. I've never seen anything like that. And I've never read anything like that. And so that's supposed to be in Northern Europe as well.
It is, yeah, so watch out.
Watch out, yes. Milo, one thing that I notice is that it's in little paragraphs. So it gives you a chance to sort of stop and think about it, even if the words are a little bit big. So the little paragraphs, I think, are really good for somebody who might not want to read a whole page of just words. Do you think that most 8-year-old boys are going to be able to read these words, or do you think that it helps because you're interested?
Yeah, I think they probably could, because
there
aren't that much words, but there are quite complicated things that you may need to understand.
I think that it is complicated, but from what I can see, it's almost more that there's plenty to keep you interested. Like I see at the beginning a big letter to a librarian, or from a librarian to the map makers, and I see a code. So I think that even if you're not busy reading all the words, there's plenty here just to play with.
And I think the bit you mentioned there about the letter at the beginning and the code, I mean, that's really nice for slightly older children. That when we first got this, that kind of went completely over Milo's head. But right now, that's something he's going to get into. So there's an interesting, It's
Lasts
kind of an
for
interesting
years.
fictional background to it. So we really like this for exactly the
Lovely.
reasons you've said. And also, I think it sort of helps you dip your toe into that kind of mythology thing, which is quite interesting. And on that note, Milo this morning, eagle-eyed, noticed on the front cover here something, he straight away said, yeah, exactly, it's the house with chicken legs. So it's nice to see it tie in. And so this brings us neatly on to the next book that we've got. So this is, we actually haven't read this yet, so we'll hold our hands up and say that, but we're excited to. This is by Sophie Anderson. So she's now written 3 books. She had The Girl Who Speaks Bear. Oh, hold on, we just lost ourselves for a moment. Technical problems there. So she's written 3 books. She wrote The Girl Who Speaks Bear, The House of Chicken Legs, and her new book is just out, and I can see it on the bookshelf behind you. But this one is centered on, is a retelling of the folk story of Baba Yaga, which is one of the Russian folk tales about the woman who lives in the house of chicken legs. It's all rather gruesome in the original story. She has an appetite for human blood, and she keeps skulls around. So there's quite a lot for boys like Milo to enjoy. But the books, have you read it, Tracy, this one?
I've read the beginning. I haven't finished
Yeah.
it. I've read the beginning of each of the 3. I was just looking up to see what awards she's won, because Sophie Anderson has basically burst onto the scene, and everybody is buzzing about her and her books for bringing the traditional tales to the new readers. So I just was trying to see what award it was she had won. I'll reach up and get the other one.
Yeah. Oh, while you're doing that, I've got the other one. I've got The Girl Who Speaks Bear here.
Yeah, I have some artwork to go with that if anybody wanted a copy of it. I've got some sort of slightly bigger than A5 artwork that could go with that.
What would be a lovely present.
Yes, and
I think this is really appealing for people who like that fairy tale thing, but maybe have got past the Grimm's fairy tales and looking for something a little bit different.
yeah.
And I can't wait to read these. So I'm not necessarily reading them to Milo. I just want to read them.
Yeah, I read half of The Girl Who Speaks Bear. I mean, putting hands up to admit what we haven't read. I do have to read right across the shop, so I dip into an awful lot. I've read half of that, and it was very, very good, The Girl Who Speaks Bear. My 12-year-old read it and loved it, and that's going to be a really good one to read in the cold, because it is set in the snow.
Yeah.
And has a lot of polar bears in it. And this
Tell us about the new one.
So the Castle of Tangled Magic, again, this is one that I haven't quite finished. This is, again, a retelling of a traditional, probably Russian tale. And this is a girl who lives in a very rural, rustic, rundown shack with her family and her little baby sister Rose, whom she adores, and she wants to make life perfect. But things sort of start falling apart at the seams, quite literally. Like there's a storm blowing, but storms don't normally sort of make all of reality kind of start pulling apart. So the boards and the doors and the stones in the fireplace, and even sort of people, something, the dimension is falling apart essentially, and she finds out that she's the one who can go through to this alternate dimension, and she ends up saving the day. And there's this fantastic scene where she falls down this shaft which is impossibly long, and there's a hat which has, I might be telling something wrong now, but I think it has multiple layers in the hat, and the solutions are because dimensions are different, they're all in the layers of the hat, and she's not supposed to have it. And there obviously are people on her tail, and they end up in a river, and it's one adventure after another. The Castle of Tangled Magic. We have about 6 of these in the shop at the moment.
Oh, that's great. It's nice to have an author on the scene who's telling those kind of stories. And I think I'm right in saying that she grew up in that storytelling tradition. I can't remember who her parents, grandparents were. Is it Norwegian or Russian, or there's an element of, I'll have to find out.
I could well believe it, but I don't know.
Yeah, she her mother, who's a writer, a Prussian grandmother, so she grew up listening to these stories and is obviously wanting to bring them to a new audience. So thank you, Sophie. Milo, you've got another book you want to talk to us about, don't you? Yeah, okay, right.
What's that? Dragonology. Oh, that looks quite lush.
This is a pretty special book. It's a very large gifty book, and I think it retails for, is it £25? We looked up earlier, so it's a big book. The wonderful thing about this, that just to set the scene, is that much like we mentioned with the Atlas of Monsters, it starts with a letter to a librarian. Dragonology starts with a letter to the reader, and the premise is that there has been a man who's spent his life compiling the history of dragons into Dragonology, and so it's presented to the reader as kind of a access to a secret vault and a secret world of dragon related information. So there's a kind of a fictional storytelling thread that goes through, but it's presented as a factual book. So I really like that. Show us what it looks like inside, Milo. Should I hold it up and you can tell us a little bit?
So
Oh, wow.
the natural history of dragons. So this is the skin of a European. I don't know what that says, but it doesn't matter about the name.
What was it? A European? Oh, that's the Latins. They've all got Latin names. I love this. So Dragon Occidentalis Magnus.
So then it goes on to the muscle bit, to the bones.
Wow, it's a proper anatomy.
Then on the other side here, there's this ear, horn, eye, fang, nostril. Now that's a primary fang, and a tongue, a jaw, a throat, and then here is the venom was, so that's the primary fang. I think it gives venom or something, and then there's a spark pouch where the flames come from, because it looks like it's coming from all the way around here, but it's really coming from there, I think.
Right.
Isn't that, I mean, it's brilliant that there's loads of sort of flaps and pull up bits, and, you know, there are like letters and things all buried inside. There's a bit where it shows you a dragon scale, doesn't it, at one point? There we go. It's got little bits inside.
Wow. So
It's
it's beautiful, and it's so imaginative, and it's so
really
clever.
imaginative. It's really imaginative, and it just sparks, you know, your imagination for your own sort of storytelling. And there's little like, don't give it away because people want to discover it for themselves. There's loads of code breaking and stuff like that inside too. So it's a really lovely book. Yeah,
I really enjoy the appeal of a book like that. For me, is that if you said to someone, we're going to give your child or adult even a great big hardback book, and they're going to read every page, and they're going to keep looking up with delight and saying, guess what I found, they wouldn't believe you. But with a book like that, they will, and they will share it. And that's what the book is supposed to be about. It's about the sharing and the joy that one person gets, making sure that it gets spread around the room, which Milo clearly is doing.
Yeah, he loves it. He loves it. And we've had some really great discussions as a result of the book. And he's gone off and he's creating dragons from Lego, and he's doing all the drawing and the spark pouch that he just mentioned. You know, when we talk about dragons, we're always talking about the spark. You know, it's really wonderful, and it really does ignite your imagination. It's
excellent.
So that's that one, and we've got one more to share with you, which again is a slightly different way to approach catering for a reluctant reader, and that's with the kind of graphic novel adjacent.
Leo, the Gorgon's curse, I think it is.
Right. Is that Joe Todd Stanton?
This is Joe Todd Stanton. So we probably know Joe Todd Stanton from books like
The Secret of Black Rock.
The Secret of Black Rock, yeah.
And for example, I have one in this room.
Okay, yes, you can show us briefly. So he's an illustrator.
For example, Arthur and the Golden Rope.
Oh yes, he's very popular with teachers.
He's extremely popular with teachers, and my husband, so Milo's dad, is, you know, that's how we came to it, actually, that it came home as a book that John was working with. And The Secret of Black Rock is a really lovely story, but I really love the Brownstones mythical collection, which this is a part of, and this is his kind of storytelling take on myths and legends, and they're not accurate in the sort of you know, the archaeological sense. But the first one was about the Sphinx. Milo's just shown the golden rope, which is from Norse legend, and this is another Greek retelling.
Minotaur.
So it's all these lovely gods and monsters that he's, you know, that the myths are famous for, but it's just the story is told in a really lovely way. So it's all picture based, so there is dialogue there, but it's, you know, it's very much driven by beautiful images. And as I said, he's an illustrator writer, so he's getting really good actually with each subsequent book about telling these stories really, really well.
That's really good for me to stop and have a look, because I hadn't really given them proper consideration. And one thing that people don't really think about is that actually literacy isn't just about being able to pick the words up off the page. It's about understanding what's going on, and following the story through the pictures means that they're getting that bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're substantial books too. I mean, I'm just looking at the page length of this. I mean, they're 60 odd pages, so they're not, you know, they're proper long-ish stories. I mean, you read this in a morning, didn't you? In a sitting.
I read that at 5:05.
Yeah, in
5:05 to 6:25, I think it was.
Okay, so it's a couple of hours, but it read it in a single sitting, and you know, that's, as you said,
that's rare for me.
There are lots of ways to enjoy reading, and I think this is nice to throw into the mix, and it's really beautiful. So
it is really beautiful. So that's hardback, but he does have paperbacks. This one is paperback.
Yeah,
that one.
And I believe the other in the Brownstone series of Milo picked up the Golden Rope. I don't know where our copy of Marcy and the Sphinx is, and there's also Kai and the Monkey Dragon as well.
What's that?
These ones are in paperback.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what a brilliant range. And if none of that gets your interest, you've always got joke books, haven't you, for boys and girls and adults. We did have an adult man pick up our catalog and say, I'm never going to read a book, but I saw in your catalog that you do joke books. I'd read a joke book. So he came in and bought joke books. So brilliant. Well, thank you both ever so much. It's been lovely talking to you.
That's brilliant. Well, I hope we've been able to show some books that you might not think about necessarily.
Yeah, and people do get stuck with that question about how, and we had the one this morning about what to buy for an 8-year-old boy who doesn't want to read. So yeah, excellent. Okay, well, thank you very much, and we will see you again.
Okay, bye.
Bye. I'm just looking how to end the recording.